ต้อนรับเข้าสู่สุทธิชัยไลฟ์กับคืนนี้แขกพิเศษจริงๆครับผมต่อไปที่เชียงใหม่เชียงใหม่นี่มีคนหนึ่งที่อยู่ที่นี่นานแล้วครับชาวสวิสคนนี้ชื่อมาร์คเฟเบอร์ใครที่ติดตามเรื่องหุ้นเรื่องการลงทุนเนี่ยต้องรู้จักมาร์คเฟเบอร์เพราะว่าคุณมาร์คเฟเบอร์นี่มีนิวส์เลเตอร์แล้วก็เป็นนักลงทุนด้วยทำเป็นสำนักวิเคราะห์ชื่อ The Boom and Doom Report เป็นเว็บไซต์นะครับ Gloom Boom and Doom สังเกตนะครับว่ามันมีบูมอยู่ตรงกลางแต่ว่าอันแรกคือ Gloom ซึ่งไม่ค่อยดีเท่าไหร่ Doom ด้วยนะครับเป็นข่าวร้ายฉะนั้นมีคนเรียกมาร์คเฟเบอร์ว่าเป็นดร. Doom ซึ่งแน่นอนครับผมก็ได้ติดตามการทำงานการวิเคราะห์ข่าวความแสดงความคิดเห็นของมาร์คเฟเบอร์มาตลอดเพราะว่าจะเห็นมาร์คเฟเบอร์ไปปรากฏเป็นคอมเมนเตเตอร์เรื่องหุ้นเรื่องเศรษฐกิจในทีวีทั้งหลายไม่ว่าจะเป็น CNBC ไม่ว่าจะเป็น Fox News แล้วก็แน่นอนในเกือบทุกเรื่องที่เกี่ยวกับการวิเคราะห์ทำนายแต่ว่ามาร์คเฟเบอร์มีชื่อว่าชอบทำนายอะไรที่มันร้ายๆที่มันเป็นดูมมากกว่าคือเป็นข่าวร้ายมากกว่าแต่ว่าส่วนใหญ่ก็ถูกต้องนะครับทำให้มาร์คเฟเบอร์มีชื่อเสียงโด่งดังมากคืนนี้ไปคุยครับ Good evening Mark
Yes, good evening. How are you?
Yeah, welcome to the program. I've been trying to get you for quite some time to just chat about what you see in the international financial, the stock market scene, and also about how you are living your life in Chiang Mai. Now, tell us how bad it is in the world because you are Dr. Doom, Mr. Bad News, right?
Well, it depends for whom.
Yeah.
The world had a colossal recession crisis in 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
And then the central banks print money.
Yeah.
In other words, this money printing is a process where the central banks, it started with the Federal Reserve in the US.
Yeah.
They go out in the markets and buy bonds, treasury bonds, mortgage-backed bonds. And by doing that, they can push down interest rates.
Yeah.
And it injects liquid, say the central bank has a balance sheet of say 100, and then they increase the balance sheet to 300.
Yeah.
Then the insurance companies, the banks, large investors become liquid.
Yeah.
Because they sell them the securities.
Yeah.
And then they can buy other assets. And so what happened after March 6, 2009, the S&P was at 666.
Yeah.
The S&P and other markets around the world rallied very strongly. Property markets rose strongly. And bond yields around the world went down very strongly with the result.
Yeah.
Say today, I give you an example. In Europe, you have bond yields 10 years.
Yeah.
In Italy, 1.7%. In Spain, 1.41%.
Yeah.
In France, 0.7%. For 10 years, money. In Switzerland, interest rates are negative, and in Japan, they're basically zero.
Right. Yeah.
In the U.S., the 10 years yields 2.32% today.
Yeah.
And as you know, in Thailand, 10-year bonds by the government also yield slightly above 2%.
Yeah.
So as an investor, you have a choice. You can keep the money in cash in the bank. As you know, they hardly pay you anything. And
No.
you can buy bonds.
Yeah.
They also hardly pay you anything.
Nothing.
Or you can buy equities and real estate.
Yeah.
So a lot of money went into so-called financial assets and real estate.
Yeah.
It also went in art. Art price went up. Collectibles, old cars went up.
Yeah.
And so forth. And lately, we had the cryptocurrency boom. With cryptocurrencies going ballistic.
Are you into Bitcoin? Are you?
Yeah, like Bitcoin, yes.
Are you yourself investing in Bitcoin now?
No, but I should have.
So you were too slow.
But I'm a large investor in equities and in real estate and in bonds, because bonds have done very well over the last few years.
Yeah.
I don't think they will do well over the next few years. But say if you talk about stocks, we have also a situation where some stocks have done fantastically well.
Yeah.
Google, Facebook, Netflix.
Yeah.
We call them the FANG stocks.
Yeah.
And then you have a lot of other stocks that have hardly moved up. So we have a lot of money concentration in very few stocks.
Yeah.
And different markets have performed differently. Now, the thing is, 2011, 2014, up to today, emerging markets like and Vietnam, every emerging economy, the markets have grossly underperformed the S&P 500 in the U.S.
Yeah, underperformed.
Let's say the S&P went up 100% and the others either went down or they didn't move up. And so by the end of 2015, the emerging markets became very inexpensive compared to the U.S.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they start on the U.S. In other words, they say the European market, Italy is up 31% this year. The U.S. is up just 15%. Or you have Thailand is up. Hold on 1 second.
Thailand is doing very well. The index latest is over 1,700 over now.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Thailand is up 20% this year, so it's performed better than the U.S. India is up 30%, and every Asian market has basically outperformed the U.S.
Yeah.
So this year we had a huge change, and so we have different groups and different sectors that perform differently.
Yeah.
I have a large portfolio in Thailand, and I still think that Thai stocks can move up. They're not terribly expensive. They're not cheap, you understand?
No.
But they're not terribly expensive.
Yeah. So you are quite optimistic. You're quite optimistic about the Thai stock market today.
Well, optimistic. As I explained to you, relative. Say, if you put a gun on my head and say, Mark, you have to buy either U.S. shares or Thai shares, I would rather buy Thai shares.
If you,
I think they're cheaper.
Yeah.
They're more reasonably priced. But at the same time, they are not incredibly inexpensive.
Yeah.
And we have to realize that I think it's a very important development, the EEC, the Eastern Economic
Corridor.
Corridor, yes. But we also have to realize Vietnam in the manufacturing sector is very competitive.
Yeah.
It is also very competitive in the agricultural sector. But aside from that, say, I'm quite optimistic about Thailand. It's not an economy that is as dynamic as, say, South Korea was in the 1980s or Taiwan was.
No.
But it is an economy that moves along as long as there is political stability.
Yeah.
And I like the military government. I think they should stay on and continue their job. They're not perfect, but they're probably better than the other.
ใช่โอเคมาร์คเขาบอกว่าเขาลงทุนในไทยเยอะนะครับแล้วก็ค่อนข้างจะมองไทยในแง่ดี EEC ก็ดูเหมือนว่าจะมีศักยภาพพอสมควรเทียบกันระหว่างหุ้นไทยถ้าใครเอาปืนไปจ่อหัวมาร์คแล้วบอกว่ายูต้องตัดสินใจซื้อหุ้นอเมริกาหรือหุ้นไทยเนี่ยมาร์คก็บอกว่าผมซื้อหุ้นไทยแต่ว่าแน่นอนเวียดนามก็มีศักยภาพแข็งแกร่งขึ้นแข่งขันกับไทยมากขึ้นไทยทุกวันนี้ก็ไม่ใช่เหมือนกับเกาหลีใต้ตอนที่บูมหรือว่าไต้หวันตอนที่บูมนะครับแต่ว่าไปได้แล้วมาร์คก็เพิ่งบอกว่าชอบรัฐบาลชุดนี้ฉะนั้นก็แปลว่ามาร์คก็เห็นว่าควรจะไป So you don't think Thailand should have election soon?
I want to tell you about the democracy.
Yeah.
I mean, we have, say, 5,000 years of recorded history, starting with the Egyptian Empire, 3,000 years BC, where in Egypt they built the pyramids, they built in Luxor Karnak temple and so forth. This was a civilization more advanced relative to the rest of the world than anything else in history. And for the last 5,000 years, until 200 years ago, and even until 200 years ago, they didn't have democracy. Democracy is an experiment. I'm not sure it will work. I have serious reservations. And number two, democracy, yes, democracy to some extent in Britain, but only some people could vote. Nobody else. Some people could vote, but not everybody. We had democracy in the US, but only some people could vote, not everybody.
What do you mean? In America, everyone says that he can vote.
Now, yes.
Oh, you mean 200 years ago? Okay. 100 years ago.
I'm just telling you, until the 1930s or so, black people couldn't vote. And women's vote came up around, I think, the 1920s, 1930s. So all I'm saying is, not everybody could vote. Also in Greece, they say, in the old Greece, they had democracy. Yeah, but only some people could vote, not everybody. So this idea that everybody should vote is an idea. In my view, it will not work. But, other people think it's the greatest invention on earth since sliced bread.
Why do you think democracy, where everyone can vote, does not work?
You see, every society consists of a number of people who work, and they work hard. And this is less so in Asia, but in Europe, we have a great part of society, as well as in the US, who does not work. You understand? But all these people who do not work, they vote to get more and more benefit from the government. And in my view, Milton Friedman, The Economist, has written about this. He's written a book, Capitalism and Freedom. The more government you have, the less freedom. The less government you have, the more freedom.
Right.
And I think in a society, if you want freedom, you have to assume a certain personal responsibility. In other words,มีความรับผิดชอบ. Because if each time something goes wrong, you say, the government must help me. Or the price of rubber is down, the government must help me. Then everybody will do that, and then at the end, the government has no more money. And so when you ask me, how bad is the global economy? One of the problems of the global economy is that the debt level, in other words, credit, as a percent of the economy, has never been higher than now.
That's true.
In the whole history of capitalism.
That's true.
And that will not end well. The more debt you have, the less economic growth you will have.
So countries, governments have to borrow money because they do not earn enough to meet the requirements of the people.
Correct, but not everywhere. You see, for instance, in China, the government has a huge debt, but they use the debt not entirely. Of course, a lot of debt was wasted, but a lot of debt was used to build the railroads, to build the infrastructure, and to build the cities. So it was a capital investment. In America, they use most of the money they borrow to give to people, to hand out to people. There are over 50 million people that get food stamps in the U.S., and there are more people who get benefits than people that pay tax. There are very few people that actually pay tax. And so that is the reason I'm not so sure that democracies will survive in the long run.
No? So what will survive if not democracy?
Well, I guess you heard of Stalin. You've heard of Hitler.
Sure. Well, I do not want to see Hitler or Stalin or even Mao Zedong running this world again, learning from history.
Well, you may not want to see it, but you could have a milder form. I mean, look, Asia, you look at which countries have become rich in the last, say, 70 years after the Second World War. Korea became a very successful economy. Not under democracy, I have to point this out.
No.
The city the small country that is nowadays, in my view, everything considered, security, education, infrastructure, reserves, is Singapore. It didn't become rich as a democracy. And Japan the same. It wasn't a dictator, but it wasn't a true democracy. In very small countries. And let me explain you why. Say you and I, we join a country club. Okay? And the country club has another, say, 500 members. The 500 members of the country club, they all agree it's important that the country club is clean. Okay?
Clean and efficient.
They all agree it has to be safe.
And efficient.
Yes. So we have kind of common ground. It's not that some members want to take from the country club and not give. And this is in every society. You have to give. You cannot just take. And if you have people that only want to take, it's not going to work.
It's right. You're right. So
the democracy, but they have relative economic freedom. You know, when I started, I went to Hong Kong in 1973, and I worked in Hong Kong and Southeast Asia and Japan from 73 to essentially year 2000 when I moved to Thailand. But I still have my office in Hong Kong. And when I saw the opening of China, I thought, this is going to change the world. Because, you know, we're talking about a country with 1 billion people. We're talking about a country with people who work. And they just one ruler taking over and saying, I'm the boss. But it's a process where a certain consensus is being reached. And then you have a leader, and some leaders then become very powerful. Xi Jinping is, since Mao Zedong, the most powerful leader.
I saw a clip during the party congress. This latest one was quite funny. Xi Jinping at the end of during one of the voting sessions said, "Who agrees? Raise your hand." Everyone raised their hand. You see, and then he said, "Who does not agree? Raise his hand." None. Not one single hand was raised. Do you call that democracy? You call that democracy?
Well, I want to tell you know, you may laugh about it.
Yeah.
And of course, at the end,
yeah,
you know, you just kind of agree with someone.
Yeah.
But in between, from the days where he was working in the party and became an absolute leader, he faced a lot of opposition. That there's no question. Saying that the military government has not done a perfect job, but it has done a reasonably good job.
Yes.
Certainly better than Mr. Obama did in the U.S. and Mrs. Merkel in Germany. That I can say.
So your decision to invest in Thailand does not rely on the political system?
Well, you understand, when I want to be diversified. I want to own some real estate. I want to own some stocks. I want to own some bonds and cash.
Yeah.
And I want to own some precious metals.
Yeah. So you diversify your portfolio.
Both silver, platinum.
Yeah. Now you said Obama did not do a good job. You think Donald Trump is doing a good job? You like Donald Trump more than Obama?
Well, I would have voted, of course, for Mr. Donald Trump.
You do? You would have?
Think
you would have. Wow.
I think the Clinton couple is an incredibly corrupt family.
Yes.
We have evidence that they are very corrupt and they abuse the system. And I mean, I think Trump had the intention to clean the system. But the deep state in the U.S. is so deep, you cannot really clean it. You know, it's Hercules would have had difficulties to clean it.
Hercules, even Hercules.
Yeah.
So
it goes so deep. You know, the State Department is so big. The FBI is so big. The CIA is so big.
Yeah.
And to control all these institutions is not easy because he cannot just say, we'll do it.
Yeah.
That's the difference between Xi Jinping and Trump.
Yeah.
Xi Jinping can say, now we're going to build this road.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it this way.
Yeah.
The One Belt, One Road project, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Trump, he cannot do that. He has to go to Congress and to the Senate.
Yeah.
And everybody, you know, this is the democracy. Everybody wants to earn some money. The pharmaceutical industry wants to make some money. The educational industry wants to make some money. Everybody. And, you know, then you end up with a mess.
See, I thought democracy means the freedom of expression, but this you are saying democracy is the freedom to make money.
Well, I want to tell you something. You know, the people told me recently in the U.S. Apparently, you're not even allowed to express your opinion anymore in the U.S. and also in Europe. They say, I'm right, but I'm not supposed to say it.
Wow, is that it has come to that point?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what do you think will happen to Donald Trump? You think he will be impeached? You think he would last the term, the full term?
Well, who knows? Yeah, they tried to kill Reagan. They killed Kennedy.
Yeah.
So who knows? I think a lot of people would like to kill him, but I think a lot of people wanted to kill Obama the more than Trump. So I don't know, but quite frankly, and I don't read everything about the FBI files and so forth.
Yeah.
But when you read between the lines, it seems to me that Trump is, of course, not 100% clean, but he is much cleaner than all the others that sit in Washington.
You think so? You think he's cleaner than all the rest in Washington?
Yes, for sure.
But he has all this conflict of interest. He has all these investments in areas where...
Clintons, they also have conflict of interest. The Bush family is one of the richest families in the world because so much money is missing from the State Department, is missing from the Defense Department. These wars in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and so forth. In Thailand, a minister, he steals some money. We're talking about maybe $100 million. In the U.S.,
it's 10 times.
Steals money, we're talking about billions.
100 times that amount. But explain to me...
1,000 times,
Explain to me
That's why I always say, when Americans go and teach countries like Thailand, you have to do that about human rights, and you have to do that about democracy, and about corporate governance, and about corruption, and so on. I laugh because in the US it's much worse.
Look at the violence. Look at the mass killings in America, right? Now,
well, not only that, but you understand these wars in Afghanistan, Iraq. How many innocent people were killed for nothing?
And you think that Trump will launch a war against North Korea?
Never.
Never. But he doesn't...
I want to explain to you why. First of all, as you know, the U.S. Navy is not very good. they crash into each other.
How can you say that? How can you say that? They have the biggest naval force in the world. They have the largest number of aircraft carriers, and 3 of the big aircraft carriers are going to the Korean Peninsula for a big exercise to frighten Kim Jong-un. How can you say that the U.S. Navy is not good?
Because recently, this year, there were already 3 accidents concerning Navy ships. And, you don't need actually... Kim Jong-un doesn't actually need missiles. The Americans can destroy themselves. They have that kind of talent. But number 2, let me explain to you something. Modern warfare, I think that in Europe, in medieval Europe, and even in the near Middle East, the castle was practically not captured. You couldn't capture it, really, unless by treason. But when they discovered, or when they invented the cannon, they destroyed all the castles. With the cannon, you could take them down one after the other. And nowadays, an aircraft carrier, in my opinion, is a sitting duck.
Sitting duck.
Sitting duck. The Chinese and probably the North Koreans, they have the hardware to destroy all the American fleet. That I have no doubt.
Really?
Number 2, already in the Mediterranean, there were some American ships. They wanted to come close to Russia. The Russia jammed them electronically. They couldn't move anymore. So there are many ways to think about it. Number 2, the second reason is this. Koreans are Koreans.
Yeah.
Whether they come from North Korea or South Korea, they are Korean. And they may not like the regime in the north, and the Northerners may not like the regime in the south, but they are Korean. If the Koreans don't like someone, it's the Japanese. That's for sure.
That's true.
That I guarantee you.
That's true. That's true. The Koreans don't like the Japanese or the Chinese even, right? But the Chinese are okay.
I mean,
the Chinese are okay for the Koreans. Yeah.
But I just want to say, if first of all, Trump, he cannot destroy all North Korea. He could drop a nuclear bomb on the whole of North Korea and wipe out the country.
Sure.
But don't you think that then the South Koreans should also feel it, and the Chinese?
Yeah, okay. I don't think that...
You have to see. North Korea has a border with China. North Korea, that the North Korean would necessarily destroy Seoul. That I don't believe, because they're Koreans. But I think they would shoot... they would send a missile into Japan.
Mark บอกว่าไม่เชื่อว่า
And number two, don't believe that the Chinese are not behind the North Korean, because when you think of it, when did he really start all these missile tests? It was after the U.S. stationed the THAAD defense system in South Korea. Now the Americans, of course, they always say, "Well, it's defensive." I don't know any weapon that is purely defensive. You understand?
I agree with you.
I can keep a gun at home and say, "Well, it's just defensive." I have a machine gun at home and it's defensive. But I can also use aggressively.
Sure.
And both the Chinese and Kim Jong-un, they strongly objected against it. And the Chinese don't like it because, you understand, from Seoul to Shanghai is maybe 1.5 hours flight. From Seoul to Beijing is a 2 hours flight. I mean, you know, it's basically Chinese territory. But the big issue, the Chinese basically have no overseas military base. But the U.S., they're everywhere. They have naval bases in Japan, they have naval bases in the Philippines, in Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore, everywhere. And so the Chinese, in the long run, they want to get the Americans out of Asia, basically, in terms of, because the Chinese, as I told you, they consume 50% of global commodities, industrial commodities. But what is the most important for them? To have
access
to these commodities. These commodities or by freighters. And now the Chinese, of course, because the U.S. also is like an elephant in the porcelain shop with Putin. Now, China and Russia are closer together, so they built this railroad where you can now ship goods from, say, anywhere in China to Russia and to Europe. So within about 12 days, you could ship goods between China and Hamburg in Europe, or Antwerp, or Amsterdam. So, you know, we have huge geopolitical changes in the world.
แต่มาร์คก็บอกว่าคงไม่เกิดสงครามเกาหลีเหนือนะครับไม่เกิดสงครามเกาหลีเหนือเพราะว่ายังไงอเมริกาก็คงไม่กล้าถล่มแล้วก็จีนก็คงไม่ยอมให้อเมริกาถล่มเกาหลีเหนือขณะเดียวกันคนเกาหลีเหนือและใต้ถึงแม้จะมีปัญหาการเมืองเนี่ยทั้งสองก็ยังเป็นเกาหลีไม่ชอบญี่ปุ่นแน่นอนฉะนั้นลึกๆแล้วคนเกาหลีก็ไม่ต้องการตามน้อยกว่าตระกูลฮิลลารีคลินตันและก็บิลคลินตันทีเดียวครับ Explain to me, Mark, why is it that since Donald Trump became president, the stock market in America kept keeps going up and up and up. Why?
Well, the thing is this. I'm not a great friend of Trump, but I think he's a better option than Hillary.
Okay.
But he, you see, under already Bill Clinton, and especially under Obama and the Democrats, you had more and more regulations and more laws that make it difficult to actually grow. Milton Friedman also wrote about this, but he's also known. When the economy grew at the highest rate in America and in Europe, it was in the 19th century. And by 1915, government spending as a percent of the economy was nowhere more than 15%. Now, in Europe, with many countries, they have 50%, 60% government spending as a percent of the economy. So the more government, the less growth. The more regulation, less growth. The more laws, the less growth. And the more government, the more corruption.
So Trump, when he came in, promised to cut regulation.
Then Operation Twist, and then QE3. And then they stopped expanding the balance sheet. But the Bank of England and the ECB and the Bank of Japan, the BOJ, they continued with these asset purchases, with the result that now close to 50% of government bonds in Japan are held by the government. 50% of ETFs for the stock market are held by the government. So again, the government goes in and buys assets, $1 billion worth of bonds, from insurance companies, from pension funds, from individuals. So these institutions, they get the money. Now, until this year, the dollar was strong. As I explained to you in the US, the 10-year bond is yielding 2.32%, but in Europe, it's yielding much less. And in Germany, it's next to zero. In Switzerland, it's negative. And in Japan, it's close to zero. So if I'm in an institution, I get all this money because I just sold the bonds to the government. And I think, what can I do with it? I say, well, I can buy stocks or bonds. If I buy bonds, why wouldn't I buy treasury bonds in the US that have a higher yield? They, in Japan, as I said, the government bonds yield zero. But why wouldn't I buy US treasuries at 2.32%? So the money flowed into the US and it boosted asset prices, real estate, and stock, and of course also bond price. So that's one reason the stock market this year has been very narrow. If you take out the performance of, say, Apple, Google, Netflix, Facebook, Amazon, the rest of the market hasn't performed particularly well.
But you have not contributed this to Trump's performance. Trump keeps claiming that this is because of him. The stock market has gone up so dramatically because it's Donald Trump. It has nothing to do with all these policies you mentioned.
Trump, you know, I'm saying I'm not a fan of his.
No.
Because he talks so much nonsense.
But you still say he's better than Obama. You still say he's better than Obama, better than...
Yeah, much better, much better. I think that everybody will agree. That's no question.
Okay, so he talks nonsense.
But I mean, I want to say... He's no genius. That you have to understand. And academically, he's not very bright. But he has some common sense. And as I explained to you, lots of things he would like to do, but he cannot do.
He cannot build a wall on the Mexico border.
He's kind of restricted. in any way.
Yeah, yeah.
I beg your pardon?
Yeah, so you think he is going to be okay? Trump will last the term?
Well, that I don't know. As I said, many presidents, including also Abraham Lincoln, were murdered. So there's always a risk.
I'm not saying about...
I don't think that...
I'm not talking about assassinations. I'm talking about impeachment and political setbacks.
Well, I don't think he will be impeached because you have to see one thing. He has a very wide power base. I mean, ordinary people, the workers, the white people and so forth, they are very supportive of him. They may not think he's a genius, but he has widespread support and also has support by some important and wealthy people. But I mean, this impeachment business, I think when I look at what happened under the Clintons, what happened under Bush, then I don't think that they should have impeached Nixon. Richard Nixon. Yeah, Richard Nixon is a saint.
Compared to the Bushes and the Clintons.
Yeah, of course.
Why do people call you Dr. Doom? Are you still Dr. Doom? Are you still Mr. Bad News?
Yes. A week before the crash in '87, I made a prediction that the market would collapse. And then in late 1980, 88, 89, I made bets that the Japanese stock market would drop at least 50%.
Wow.
It then dropped to more than 70%. But and then I got the Asian crisis right. And I got the NASDAQ bubble right. In other words, after March 2000, the NASDAQ went down by close to 80%. And I got the 2007 crisis right. So people remember that. But actually, I also had a lot of recommendations, including I wrote a report in 1984-85 about Thailand. And I said, because we had a big boom in Thailand until about 1978. Then we had a crisis. It was called the Raja crisis, the Raja
finance crisis.
Yes, and everything collapsed, including Mabun, Prong, and so forth. But by 85, I thought the market is very cheap. And I got some investors to invest in Thailand. They doubled their money very quickly within a year or two. And I did the same in the Philippines. And then by the late 80s, I thought the markets that are very cheap are the Latin American markets. Argentina, Chile, Peru, Brazil. Because they had very high inflation and the currency had collapsed and so forth. So I saw an opportunity there. And then my partners and I, we started was maybe the first or second Russia fund. In 1992, where we invested in Russia. So, and then in the late 1990s, I identified commodities as being very inexpensive, copper and gold and silver and so forth. As you know, gold was at $255 in 1999. Now it's over $1,200. So it hasn't done that badly.
And now, what are you predicting for the future now? Any bad news? Any real bad news?
Yes, of course. I think the whole thing will collapse.
What?
The question is, well, the whole financial system will collapse.
When?
I have to call up the central bank.
No, but if
have to call up Trump.
Call up Trump. But why are you pessimistic about the whole financial system?
I explained to you that the credit as a percent of the global economy,
the debt,
has never been higher than it is now. So understand that this is a bubble. We are in a yeah, you can lower interest rate to negative. That you can do. But the negative interest rate is expropriation of your money. Negative interest rate is you deposit $100,000 with the bank, and a year later you get back 95,000.
They charge you. They charge you
so, you can do it,
for
but
depositing money.
I don't think it would be very good for the economy.
No, I know, yeah. So
anyway, number two, the economy in the West and the generation of people that were born in the capitalism between 1800 and say the 1960s, each generation earned more than the previous generation. Their income went up, and they had more wealth than the previous generation. This generation in the Western world, the so-called millennials, with very few exceptions like Marc Zuckerberg and so forth, we're not talking about these people, we're talking about the typical household, the typical individual. At 35, the millennials, they earn less than their parents did. I'm a boomer, I'm not a millennial. So my daughter would earn less than I do at 35, than I did at 35. And they have less money than I had at 35.
Wow. So
this is a very important consideration. You understand? That's why these people have also a different voting pattern than you and I have. And these guys, you know yourself about the cost of a property in Bangkok. I mean, a nice luxury property in the Tongloor area or so costs close to $2 million US. How many people in Thailand can afford to buy a $2 million apartment?
No, not many. Not many. No.
Not many. And, in Thailand, because I live here and I can see myself, the cost of living has gone up quite a lot. You understand? The food cost has gone up. Electricity has gone up. Water has gone up. The oil, gasoline, all these things have gone up.
Right,
And the beer price is up. That is the biggest disaster for me.
Beer price is up. That is quite a big deal for you, right? Cigarette also. Cigarette price has gone up very dramatically.
But you understand, the difference between me and the young guy is I greatly benefited from the financial boom because I own real estate, I own stocks, I own bonds, I own precious metals. So, I spend more than I spent 10, 15, 20 years ago, but I have also a much higher value than I had at the time.
Sure. Marc, your controversial remark in your October report has given you any trouble about white people, black people in America?
Actually. Well, let me explain to you, I'm not a racist. And I'm essentially a student of economics. And I'm a student of economic history. This is something I've really spent a lot of time on. I've also written a book, Rise and the Fall of Great Cities. And I spent a lot of time on essentially understanding why did some countries become rich and others didn't. Why did some civilizations become prosperous and why others didn't. And so we had the great civilizations, the Egyptians, and then the Persians, and then the Greek civilization, and then the Romans. I'm talking here about more the Western civilization, because in Asia we had a different pattern. We had a very advanced Chinese civilization. But they can translate their advances into a capitalistic system. And this is very important to understand. We had the Renaissance,
right,
and we had also essentially the age of enlightenment.
Sure.
This was an age in Europe where people started to challenge established beliefs that had been guarded by the Catholic Church, among others. So, for instance, Galileo expressed the view that the world was round and that it was rotating and so forth. And Kepler did the same, and Copernicus did the same, and so on. So that led keen to invent stuff. You know, they invented a lot of things. And people like Vasco da Gama, who sailed around Cape of Good Hope to move away to Asia, Magellan, and Christopher Columbus. And over time, in the 17th and 18th century, and particularly in the 19th century, people from Europe, partly because they were impoverished in Europe, they were starving in Ireland, and they went to the U.S. This was a group of people that consisted of very hard-working people. They were farmers. They went to you know, I'm not saying they were nice people necessarily, because they killed a lot of Indians and so on. But they introduced agriculture, very efficient agriculture. And where you have corporations.
That
nobody had that time. And the Italian trading cities, Florence, Amalfi, Venice, they had invented the double accounting system, which a corporation needed. So this was a major achievement, and they applied it. And as you know, the Europeans and the Europeans invented the railroad. Later they invented the agricultural machine. And the population of the world was already 200 million at the time of Jesus Christ. That was the population of the world. It remained relatively constant until about 1800. And then it started to grow very rapidly, and now if you talk about civilization and economic growth, and I'm not saying the white man has always been nice. The Vietnam War was a disaster, and the Americans, they carpet bombed Cambodia and Laos, a complete disaster. But the others might have been even worse.
But why? What made you write this sentence in your October report? Thank God white people populated America, not the blacks. Otherwise, the U.S. would look
now
like...
I want to ask you. Do we have freedom? In real life, so we're not all the same.
But Marc, you knew when you wrote this that it would be controversial. You knew you would get criticism, right?
No, I didn't realize that the world had gotten so crazy. That I did.
No, so you know, the CNBC, Fox Business Network have dropped you from the program, right?
Yes, but that I don't really care. You know, nowadays, these big stations, nobody pays attention to their news because they lie. And they have very... Look, I give you an example.
Yes.
When they had the riot in Bangkok, as you know, there were some people that were camping in this, what is it called, the park there, Lampoon Park.
Yeah. Lumpini.
And
Lumpini Park.
Lumpini, yes.
And
and then they put fire to some tire. There was smoke, and they already also threw a bomb into the apartment.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is this. CNN presented that news as if the whole country was up in flames.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, you know it. So you tell me, do they tell you to tell the world the truth or not the truth?
No, it
and
was...
that I object, that people can sit there and say things that are not truthful.
Yeah.
I suppose that you also listen or that you follow the teachings of Buddha.
Yeah.
What is one of the most important requirements if you want to improve your life? Well, you know, the people that say, first of all, do you actually know what racism is?
Well, people say you're racist because you discriminate, one race from another.
Oh, that, you understand, that is a big assumption you are making,
I'm not
which I think is wrong.
Yeah.
I went to, I studied in London.
Yeah.
Then I met at the London School of Economics an Indian. The first time he met me, he said, Mark, where do you live? I said, in Knightsbridge. He said, how much you pay for your room? I said, pounds a week. He said, are you crazy, Mark? You can stay in my house in Queen's Way, the north of Hyde Park.
Yeah.
So I stayed with him for a few weeks while I was completing my PhD.
Yeah.
And then, he went back to South Africa. He had explained to me how the system works because Indians in South Africa, they were not entirely in South Africa, and I wrote an article about South Africa. It was also based on a book that my friend had told me I must read, which is kind of Move Your Shadow.
Yeah.
Move Your Shadow is a very interesting book, and it describes exactly the viciousness of apartheid. That is racism. You understand?
That is,
when you have a ruling class, say the white, and other races, are not allowed to participate in some activities. They are not allowed to own land, like we foreigners in Thailand, by the way.
You do own a house in Chiang Mai, so
and then,
no problem.
They couldn't vote, and they couldn't. They had to live in certain areas, which is very important. By forcing them. The facts.
In some of the news agencies about your remark and what people said about you, but
yes, I know. I'm aware of that, and a lot of people have come forward in my favor and said Marc has actually stated the obvious.
So you have no regret. You have no regret.
No. Zero regret.
Zero regret. Also, you have been...
I just want to add a little commentary to you, just for your consideration. 14th century, built a large fleet of ships. And they visited, apparently, Africa, so they could travel very far. And they gave up the program. And incidentally, who built the railroads around the world? Yeah, we capitalists are bad, but at least we built the railroads, built bridges. And to be fair to the British, can't say, well, I went to see a girlfriend. As simple as that. But you understand?
Yeah.
On ethical grounds and moral grounds, and I'm a Christian, I'm happy to be a Christian, but I have a strong affinity to the teachings of Buddha. I don't go to the temple and pray, because that's not what the Buddha wanted. Buddha wanted that you improve yourself, and that's I try to do.
It's true.
I haven't succeeded yet, but we can still try. So I'm still young. I can still
You're
try.
Still young. You're what, 70 this year, Mark?
72.
72.
Yeah, 70.
72. You're still okay. You're still okay. You are as bright as ever. Witty, bright, and optimistic. I wouldn't call you Dr. Doom at all, in fact. After having...
Look, I'm riding motorcycles in Thailand.
Yeah, I know.
Or 1,000cc motorcycles. I think you have to be optimistic to have racing bikes in Thailand.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you very much for a highly delightful conversation tonight. I will ask you to come back again.